Dark Wolf here. Settle in, because this one's going to run a bit. We're not doing a quick hit, we're doing a post-mortem on a political marriage gone bad and what it says about the whole system that keeps chewing people up. And as always, before we dive, I take no sides and I have no political affiliation. I'm not Team MAGA, not Team Resistance, not Team Please Clap. I'm Team what's actually true, what's bullshit, and how are they playing you. So, Marjorie Taylor Greene. The resignation speech, the political breakup letter she basically read to the country. She stands up and says, I refuse to be a battered wife. That's her opening emotional frame. Not I'm retiring to spend more time with family. Not I've done my service. No, she goes straight to, I was loyal, I was abused, and now I'm done. That's not just a resignation. That's a narrative she wants burned into your brain. It's a hell of a card to play. Let's unpack that, because there are some true things buried under a pile of self-mythologizing. First, the part that's dead on. Her description of the political industrial complex. She basically says both parties are running this giant machine that needs you angry, needs you scared, and needs you constantly convinced that the other side is a threat to your existence. And you know what? She's right about that. Look around you. Every ad, every fundraising email, every viral clip is some version of, those people over there are going to destroy your country, your job, your kids, your faith, your guns, your planet. Pick your flavor unless you send us money right now. That's not some hidden conspiracy. That's the business model. Outrage is the product. Your attention is the currency. And your fear is the fuel they pour into the engine. And she talks about how, while you're busy being weaponized and pointed at the other half of the population, it's the same donors, the same consultants, the same lobbyists, the same entrenched interests making bank no matter who wins. Again, that's not crazy talk. That's Tuesday in D.C. Corporations hedge bet both sides. Defense contractors don't cry when one party wins and the other loses. They adjust their logo on the PowerPoint and keep cashing checks. So point one, she's not wrong that there's a political machine feeding on division and money. We're not going to pretend that's some radical new insight. It just hits different when it comes from inside the house, especially from someone who absolutely used that machine when it benefited her. Then she shifts to the common American. That phrase keeps coming up. The single-income family that can't keep up anymore. The parents who watch their grocery bill balloon, their rent climb, their health insurance deductibles get stupid, and they're told the economy is great, while they're staring at their bank balance like, for who exactly? A lot of people feel like they did everything they were supposed to do and still got screwed. And she's poking that raw nerve on purpose. But again, it's not fiction. Wages at the bottom and the middle haven't kept pace with the cost of living for a long damn time. Everyone knows someone working 2 jobs and still not getting ahead. So when she says, hey, this system hasn't been working for regular people, she's tapping into something real. You can hate her guts and still admit that much. Now, one of the most interesting lines she drops is about 4D chess. She straight up says, there is no magic plan, no genius strategy unfolding behind the scenes. No, trust the plan. All this chaos is secretly scripted, and it's all going to pay off any day now. That, coming from her side of the political universe, is a nuclear statement. Because for years, people have been comfort blanketing themselves with this idea that whatever looked incompetent, cruel, or chaotic was actually part of a master strategy. Oh, you don't get it. This is all part of the long game. Nah. A lot of it is just ego, confusion, bad decisions, and people improvising while they're in way over their heads. So when she says there is no plan, she's knocking the legs out from under a whole fantasy world a lot of people have been living in. That's probably one of the most honest things she says in the whole speech. And on Epstein, let's be real, wanting the truth out about Epstein, wanting transparency, wanting victims centered, that's not some fringe stance. That's basic decency. If she's saying, I'm standing with these survivors, I want those files out, I don't care which powerful names get uncomfortable, that's the right instinct. You don't have to like her or trust her to say, on that specific issue, pushing for daylight is the correct moral direction. If she caught heat for pushing on that, that's a point in her favor on that specific front. That doesn't cleanse her of everything else, But it does mean not every word out of her mouth is snake oil. Sometimes even people you don't like stand in the right place on a particular issue. Adults can handle that nuance. Now let's zoom out a bit and talk about this "if they cast me aside, they've cast you aside" move she's pulling. That is classic ego politics. She basically tells her supporters, if Trump and the donor class and the party machine don't want me anymore, that means they don't want you anymore, because I represent you. That's how you keep people feeling emotionally bonded to you, even as your power collapses. You fuse your identity with theirs. So any attack on you equals an attack on them. We see this trick everywhere. Boss gets criticized, they're really attacking you. Celebrity gets consequences, this is really about silencing you. Politician gets dropped, the establishment has rejected you. No, sometimes they just rejected them. That doesn't mean the people don't matter. It means that person isn't the exclusive vessel of public will they claim to be. And that's where her narrative gets really self-serving. She's trying to turn a personal political fall into a symbolic crucifixion of the entire working class. That's dramatic, to put it kindly. Let's jump to the economic part again, because that's one of the truest threads in this whole thing, and also one of the most abused. She talks about how younger generations are stuck, how older generations watch the ground shift under their feet, how the idea of working hard and getting ahead feels like a scam now. If you're watching this and nodding along, it's because you're living it. Wages lagging, rent stupid, everything from insulin to eggs climbing, and somehow the people making decisions all seem fine. They're not sweating their utility bills. They're not price checking cereal at 11 p.m. Where she goes wrong is when she turns that into nothing ever gets better for the common American, no matter who wins. That absolutism sounds good, but it's not fully honest. Some things have gotten better at different times. Worker protections, civil rights, safety regulations, access to certain kinds of care. The problem isn't that literally nothing ever changes. It's that the gains are uneven, fragile, and often overshadowed by new forms of exploitation. If you're going to tell people the truth, you can't just feed them despair in a red, white, and blue wrapper. You've got to say, yeah, the system is rigged in a lot of ways, but it's not static. It can change. It has changed. And if the only people who show up are the ones owned by donors, guess whose interests get served? Now let's talk about her big monster mash. Neocons, big pharma, big tech, foreign governments, elite donors, all presented as one giant tentacle beast running everything. This is where we drift from sharp critique of power into comforting cartoon villain. Here's the reality. Yes, there are big corporations and interest groups that have way too much power. Yes, foreign money tries to influence policy. Yes, there are think tanks and lobbyists and consultants who've been in the game for decades. But they're not one single hive mind. They fight each other. They undercut each other. They drag policy in different directions. It's not one evil brain. It's a whole zoo of predators, and they're not always on the same team. When you compress that mess into one unified supervillain, you give people something emotionally satisfying to hate, but you also make it easier to manipulate them. Because now, instead of understanding how specific interests work, banks, defense, energy, tech, they just blame the big bad blob and wait for some savior to slay it. That's how you keep people stuck in fantasy instead of strategy. Let's circle back to that no plan line and sit with it a second longer, because that's actually a moment where she's pulling back the curtain more than she probably realizes. Think about how many times you've heard variations of, "Don't worry, the good guys are secretly in control. There are white hats in the shadows. There's a plan unfolding. All this chaos is actually 4D chess." People cling to that because it lets them feel like they're informed and special and safe, even as everything looks nuts. When Greene says, "No, there is no plan. This is just power being swung around, people improvising, and a lot of self-interest," that's the kind of thing that, if you're paying attention, should snap you out of the cult mindset. Because if even the inner circle is telling you this isn't some divine script, it's just a bunch of flawed humans grabbing at power, maybe stop turning them into saviors. Now, accountability. The word she dances around but never actually embraces. She talks about corruption, manipulation, toxic media, elites profiting from division, political leaders treating their own like disposable tools. All very likely, all very believable. Where in that speech does she look in the mirror and say, here's how I contributed to that. Here's where I messed up. Here's where I went along with the bullshit because it served me. You don't hear that. You hear hurt, anger, disillusionment, but not, I'm sorry for the role I played in riling people up with nonsense. I'm sorry for feeding the beast I'm now complaining about. She wants to be the whistleblower without being the former employee who says, yeah, I was part of this scam for years. That's the honesty gap with her, and you've got to clock that if you don't want to get played. You're going to see two lazy takes pumped at you about this resignation. Take A. She's a pure, brave truth-teller being punished by a corrupt system. Take B. She's a clown trying to rewrite her own history and nothing she says matters. Both of those are cop-outs. The uncomfortable adult version is this. She's a deeply flawed politician who helped build the outrage machine, absolutely hurt people with some of the rhetoric and conspiracies she pushed, and she's now telling some hard truths about how that same machine works when it's done with you. You don't have to like the messenger to examine the message. So, what do you do with that? You stop handing your brain to these people. That's what. When someone tells you there's a secret plan, just trust us, you remember this moment and go, yeah, I've heard that before. How about you show your work instead? When someone says if they're coming for me, they're coming for you, you step back and ask, or are they just coming for you because you screwed up and you're trying to drag me into your mess emotionally? When someone wraps themselves in the suffering of real victims, battered spouses, survivors of abuse, exploited kids, and uses that as a political costume, you call that out as crossing the line, no matter what jersey they wear. What Greene's speech really does, if you strip away the melodrama, is confirm three big things. One, the system is not run for your benefit. It's run for donors, corporations, power-hungry politicians, media grifters, and their friends. You matter to them as a vote, a dollar, and a share button. Two, there is no magic plan. There are only choices, some smart, some stupid, some cruel, some kind. If you're waiting for a savior with a secret blueprint, you're volunteering to be manipulated. Three, even the loudest loyalists are disposable. You can scream the party line at full volume for years and still get tossed the second you stop being useful or obedient. If you take anything productive from her resignation, let it be that. Not poor Marjorie, not evil witch, but this is how the machine treats its own, so imagine how little it cares about you. So next time some politician gets on a stage and tells you how much they love you, how they're fighting for you, how you're their top priority, I want you to remember this little breakup story. Remember how fast a ride or die becomes great news for the country, the minute loyalty isn't absolute. Remember how quick they are to turn a person into an enemy the second they stop clapping on cue. And most of all, remember this. Nobody up there deserves your worship. Scrutiny? Sure. Support when they earn it? Fine. But worship? No. That's how you end up defending shit you'd never tolerate from anyone else, just because your team did it. Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation speech isn't the fall of Rome. It's one loud character in a much bigger, uglier story. But it's useful because every now and then, in between the self-pity and the ego, she accidentally says the quiet part out loud. There is no plan. The system is rigged toward the powerful, and loyalty to personalities will break you. Take the lesson. Skip the hero worship. If you have a story you want me to break down, post it in the comments, and as always, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. And remember, this is Dark Wolf, signing off.